Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you all enjoyed your break. And Nishant is here, thank goodness. I've taken off the shoes. I was told I had to wear the shoes on stage, and then I could take them off. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Hunter. I am an identity management architect within Microsoft's internal IT, alongside my esteemed colleague, Brian Poole, whom you heard speaking earlier. I am going to be talking about how Microsoft IT, in a fairly rapid manner, decided to deploy strong authentication enforcement to all Microsoft employees, to our cloud services. And when I say rapid, I mean probably in the course of about 6 weeks or so, we went from pilot to production. But let's start at the beginning. Act 1, the perpetual pilot. So who here has heard of Azure Multi-Factor Authentication, Azure MFA? Vittorio, you don't count, you work with me. So Azure Multi-Factor Auth is the service that came out of the PhoneFactor acquisition that took place several years ago. The best way to think about Azure MFA, if you're not familiar with it, is cell phone as strong authenticator. And in fact, Andre talked about this during his keynote this morning, where we can take the notion of strong authentication, which used to be solely restricted to the smart card sitting on your belt, and extend it out to other form factors, things like cell phones, things that people have, smartphones that people have fairly ubiquitously on their belts, in their pockets, on their persons at all times, that allow us to take what was once a fairly onerous user experience equation of enforcing strong authentication and being able to enforce it more ubiquitously and more broadly in order to secure our environments. That's the good story. That's the idea. However, when Microsoft IT started deploying PhoneFactor, started deploying Azure MFA, we were stuck in pilot for a while, for a good little while. We had a pilot server sitting up and running. We had some on-prem components. We had some components of the cloud service going. And we had 1,000, 2,000-ish users who were enrolled in our strong authentication pilot. And that pilot kept running for, well, 1 month is kind of a joke. So who thinks 2 months? No hands. You're all very smart. Who thinks 6? Wow. 12 months, who thinks 12? Every hand in the room shoots up. Yes, we were sort of in this perpetual pilot for about 12 months where we had Azure MFA deployed and we had it enforced to a couple of thousand users. But really, if you think about it, 1,000 or 2,000 users in a pilot program versus 250,000 Microsoft employees, I'm sorry, that's a rounding error. Like, that's not even math. Why did it take so long? Why were we sitting in pilot for so long? I think the reason why, and this is going to become apparent as we talk about how we were eventually able to move from pilot into production, the reason why we took so long, I think, is because we were having conversations at a technical level. We were talking about technology. We were talking about security from with a very technology-focused lens. We were not necessarily talking about the business impact of the things we were trying to deploy. We weren't necessarily partnering with our internal customers, partnering with our business. For those of you who heard Mr. Poole earlier this afternoon talking about how we performed this massive integration exercise with Nokia, one of the major rules, or one of the major principles of the Nokia integration was don't break the business. One of the major rules of any IT deployment was, and always is, don't break the business. And so when IT started driving a strong authentication deployment, we kept running into these sharp edges in the user experience. Deploying strong authentication, even when we can make the experience better, even when we have better form factors and better services, things like Azure MFA, things like your cell phone as your strong authenticator, you are, by nature of the deployment, inducing some level of friction into the user experience, kind of by design. And because this was being run out of IT, because this was being pushed by IT, whenever there was a speed bump in the user experience, the default response from leadership was, whoa, hey, stop. We can't impact the business. We can't impact our users. Roll back or don't expand. And it was that lack of really top-down organizational messaging that I think really limited our ability to more broadly enforce and to more broadly deploy Azure MFA and to more broadly secure our cloud resources, even though this was going to be a really good thing for the company. We just weren't having the right conversations. We were talking about technology. We weren't necessarily talking about the business. But a year-long pilot was still a good thing from a technology perspective because it allowed IT, it allowed the IAM team to learn how to operate a new service offering. Microsoft as a company, kind of unsurprisingly, big, complex, very mobile workforce. We have employees on 6 out of 7 continents. We had components of Azure MFA deployed on-prem. We had components of Azure MFA deployed in the cloud. We deployed some things straight out of the box. We deployed some things that needed a certain level of customization to meet some of our compliance and some of our security requirements. Those of you who heard me talk about Azure MFA last year probably remember that. And so just from an operational perspective, our team had to learn how to operate a new service. And we had to be able to plan for scale. Even though we were only operating at a couple of thousand users, being able to do even that allowed us to get into our labs. It allowed us to mock up, hey, what's it actually going to look like someday in the great by and by when we actually have 100,000 users enrolled in this service, and start doing performance testing and start doing test harnesses that allowed us to prepare for the day in the great by and by. And then the day in the great by and by came along in a way that not a lot of us expected. That day in the great by and by came about Christmas Day, 2014. What did Laura get for Christmas this year? Did Laura get a pony? I swear to God, I built these slides before Nishant's talk, so I had no idea he was doing that thing with Ian. Woo! Did Laura get new shoes? Laura always gets new shoes. Did Laura get back-to-back Seahawks Super Bowl victory? Why do you pass from the one, really? Or did Laura get a 9:30 a.m. Christmas morning conference call with her CISO? Did you ever get one of those emails where you get the meeting invite and you look at the meeting invite and you say, this is either going to be really good or really bad? When you get the meeting invite and it's Christmas morning, there kind of is no good. Like, there is no good outcome there because, well, my CISO has a life. If he's calling me on Christmas Day, it's kind of important. Why did he do this? Many of you probably remember this. The decision that was made by Microsoft and a number of our industry partners to release the interview over streaming media, despite all of the Sony hacks and the evil, nefarious, terrorist, random threats. And so we decided to do that. And it was a great thing for freedom of expression. And I will now take my chance to honor my freedom of expression and say, it was a fairly mediocre film. Can we all just say that to ourselves? But the fact that we released it was a very good thing. Totally bought in, totally agreed with that. Because we're the IT guys, we still needed to be pragmatic, and we had to look around and say, we're kind of calling their bluff. So we want to be proactive. We want to talk about how we're going to secure our infrastructure, how we're going to secure our business in the event that something bad happens. And we've got all kinds of processes in place. We've got just a kick-butt security operations team that already has various incident response plans in place. So Christmas morning, we're all on the phone, and we get these security response plans in place. And someone asks the question, are we doing enough? Is what we've always done good enough for what may be about to come? The next question came, talking about strong authentication, adding strong authentication to our cloud services. Hey, there's this Azure MFA thing that I hear has been in this perpetual pilot for a year. Hey, IT, You can deploy that to the entire company by the end of January, right? When a president of your company asks you this, a couple of things roll through your head in really quick succession. No. Absolutely, boss, we can totally get that done. Can we all just talk later? It's Christmas Day and I want to go watch my Netflix. The answer that came out of the IT person's mouth, perhaps foolishly, absolutely, boss, we can totally get that done in the next 6 weeks. So how did it go? Believe it or not, it went surprisingly well. I'm not even going to say surprisingly well. It went about as well as you could imagine a really rapid ramp up of a potentially less than popular to the end user security initiative was going to go. The reason it went well, and the reason it went a lot better than it potentially could have, was because unlike during the year of the unending pilot, when we were just trying to make this an IT-driven initiative, we had leadership backing. We had presidents, plural, of our company saying, this is important, and we're going to secure the business, and IT, I back you in going forward and doing this. So executive sponsorship, super important, and was the thing that had been missing, I think, theretofore. And a big part of that executive sponsorship included accepting some level of user impact. The thing about doing it quickly, and again, I think Brian mentioned this earlier today when he was talking about getting the Nokia acquisition done so quickly. Doing it quickly means you're not going to get it perfect on the first try. You're going to click the wrong button, or you're going to find out that you made an assumption that worked at 1,000 user scale that doesn't necessarily work at, 250,000 user scale. You're going to piss some people off. It's kind of inevitable. The way that you're able to move through that and the way that you are able to succeed in the face of that is by actually partnering with your business and by actually having the conversation with the business about, we're going to do this, there's going to be some hinky little bumps along the way, but this is still important to the company, and we as an IT organization are going to do everything in our power to make sure that whatever bumps happen are reacted to very quickly, are responded to very quickly. As a part of this, we not only Microsoft IT as an IT organization, but we also partnered very closely with the Azure Active Directory team, our cloud service provider who run the Azure MFA service offering. There's kind of this notion of we are the customer and they're the vendor and we sort of stay at arm's length with each other. No, that wasn't going to be the case here. We all kind of got into a room and agreed, as a partnership that this is important for the company, and if there needs to be escalated support, expectations, if I need to be able to page one of Alex's engineers in the middle of the night, guess what? I've got Alex's pager number. He kind of wishes I didn't, because I actually had made use of it. And so it ended up leading to a largely successful deployment of StrongAuth, which is to say, we got it done. Strictly speaking, we got it done by the middle of February, not the end of January, but we got it done. We sent out comms, and we had troubleshooting guides for our help desk. We got all of the big enterprise support mechanisms engaged so that all roads didn't lead to Laura and Alex's cell phones, because that wasn't going to scale to 250,000 users. We got it all done. We did happy little training videos to help people get enrolled for Azure MFA. We staffed up our help desk. We had a 24-hour war room running for about 4 days. Some of us didn't get a lot of sleep for 4 days, but we got it done. So now, it's the new normal. MFA is a fact of life. Multi-factor authentication and strong authentication to cloud services is a fact of life within Microsoft. What does that look like? What does the new normal look like? First rule of identity management is that identity management is exception management. And so very rapidly, after we turned up strong auth broadly to the entire company, we started getting requests for exceptions. I can't have strong auth applied to me because of this. I can't have strong auth applied to me because of that. What constitutes a legitimate request for an exception to a strong authentication enforcement policy? And before I start flipping cards over, I want to point out that every single one of these actually hit my inbox. Well, I'm sitting on my sofa with my iPad, and I want to browse my email from my iPad, and my corporate laptop that has my virtual smart card on it, it's over on the couch, and I don't want to go over there and pick it up. We are retail employees working on a sales floor. Microsoft has a retail presence. Well, hey, wait a minute. That actually kind of makes sense, because if you're standing at a checkout line and you're trying to buy your thing from the Microsoft store, and the retail employee has to pick up their cell phone to do a thing, are you actually going to believe they're not texting their girlfriend? No, it's a bad visual. Oh, hey, okay, that's a business case we hadn't thought of. Let's go and partner with the retail business to figure out how to make that work. I do customer demos. I'm staring at Vittorio because we did this the week before TechEd, and he said, Laura, please don't do this to me. And we actually let him off the hook. And the reason we let him off the hook is because when you dig into this and when you talk to our sales and marketing folks, the actual requirement here wasn't, I do customer demos, so I can't do MFA. The requirement was, I do customer demos, my customer demos can't fail because MFA isn't working, which gets back to how you operationalize, how you manage the system at scale. It wasn't that we needed to turn off MFA for our sales guys, even though that was kind of the first knee-jerk reaction they came to. It was that we needed to build the confidence and the credibility within the business that, no, that is a rock-solid service. And if I'm out here demoing to a customer and I get this little prompt now, I, as the technical evangelist, I'm confident that the system's going to work. My demo's just going to keep chugging along. And hey, it gives me a great little opportunity to say, and by the way, here's a service that Microsoft offers that allows you to better secure your network, as long as the service works. So that was kind of the real lesson that we took away from that, again, by partnering with the business. The last one was from the executive sponsor of the program, which was when we came to him and started explaining that, yeah, we've got these kind of use cases we hadn't thought of, and they're coming to us saying they need exceptions for 2FA. The answer we got from the executive sponsor of the program was no. There will be no exceptions to the 2FA policy, none whatsoever. Not necessarily a realistic statement, not necessarily a practical statement, but a really fantastic statement to have from your executive leadership, because it allowed us, as the enforcers of the new policy, to have a leg to stand on. It allowed us to be able to look at these slew of requests that were coming into us, and it allowed us to look at the one on the top left and go, no, while still allowing us to then look at the retail use case, the technical evangelist, the sales and marketing use case, and actually dig in with them to say, okay, I'm not going to turn off 2FA because this is important to the company, this is valuable to the company, and this is a program that has a lot of executive support within the company. But let's talk about your use case. Let's talk about how we can allow you to continue to function as a business within the new normal. Something else we learned after the strong auth rollout. After a strong auth rollout, what will IT get blamed for? I can't get on wireless. Is this because of 2FA? I can't renew my smart card. Is it because you're turned on 2FA? The MDM PIN policy changed. Is this because of 2FA? This random app on my desktop, I double-clicked on it this morning and it wouldn't launch even though I'm running this weird daily internal build of Threshold that isn't certified to run this third-party app, but I double-clicked on it and it didn't launch. It's 2FA's fault. Trick question, you're going to get blamed for all of them. I wanted to call out this last one because it proved a really interesting sort of lesson to us, which was Microsoft IT as an IT organization, just functionally. Microsoft IT is a really big place. Thousands of employees managing different portions of the infrastructure. Our identity management team manages all the identity stuff. Our messaging team manages all the messaging stuff. Our client team manages all the client stuff, including, as it turns out, our MDM infrastructure, unsurprisingly Intune. We get a good deal on licensing. About 2 months after we deployed StrongAuth and turned up StrongAuth enforcement to the entire company, everyone on the IAM team, and as it turns out, everyone in the company, got an email from the support inbox from our MDM admin team that said, hey, just so you know, on Monday, we're changing the PIN policy in all of your phones. So you now have to have a 6-digit PIN, up from 4. And so just so you know, that's happening. The number of emails I had to send over the next 48 hours that said, I swear to God, this wasn't me. I learned about it the same time as the rest of you. The lesson we learned, and sort of the full and frank internal conversation, we're all friends here, it's really good, the conversation we had was the leadership of the IAM team reached out to the leadership of the client team and said, hey guys, we kind of flubbed this. You know, we as MSIT kind of flubbed this. We should have talked. We should have coordinated. We should have done this better. Not so much so that Laura doesn't get blamed for stuff, even though that's really important to Laura, but more along the lines of so that our users don't keep getting hammered with this is changing and this is changing and that's changing. And after a certain point, if your users keep getting hammered with this change and this change and this change and that change, those notifications themselves begin to degrade your security posture because your users don't have a predictable experience. And so that's kind of what we learned. But again, trick question, you're going to get blamed for everything. Wrapping up, the road ahead, now that we're in the new normal, now that 2FA and now that StrongAuth is a fact of life within Microsoft IT, what do we want to do next? The thing we want to do next, and we're really looking forward to a bunch of the cool stuff that's coming in Win 10 to help us with that, is to help do a better and better job of smoothing out those rough edges of the user experience. And for those of you who have seen some of the really cool stuff that's coming in Win 10 around, what's it called now, Passport? I lose track of product names. Things like Cloud Domain Join, I think are going to really improve the ability to, we want to be able to eliminate extraneous prompting to our end users. Because if we can eliminate extraneous prompting, then the once in a while that they legitimately get prompted for StrongAuth, get prompted for 2FA, their response isn't, oh, for the love of God, I've gotten prompted 27 times today. Their response is, oh, I'm getting prompted to go check in source code. This must be really important. And they kind of roll with it. That's our goal. Ask me back next year. I'll tell you how it's going. Thank you very much for your time. We've got maybe 2 minutes for questions. I think David's running around with a microphone. Also happy to take questions in the hall afterwards or in the bar later, as always.
Can you just speak to what the span of the 2FA solutions were, or the form factors were, and where the rough edges were that you alluded to?
Sure, absolutely. So the span of the form factors were within Microsoft. We support 2FA using either a physical smart card, the very common thing hanging off your belt everyone's familiar with, the virtual smart card, which is the Windows artifact that began shipping with Windows 8, totally awesome, or Azure MFA on your cell phone, either using a voice call or using a push authenticator app sitting on that's sitting on the phone. The rough edges came from kind of 2 big buckets. Big bucket number 1, really big hybrid enterprise with lots of different systems, legacy versions of Office that didn't necessarily speak all the right federated protocols. What did we call Exchange Active Sync this morning? A nightmare. Anyway, so I think that was kind of one big bucket, and that is as I see it, going to self-resolve over time as things like ADOL roll out, as better support of federated protocols come into effect. That's bucket number one. Bucket number two is just kind of the human factor of I'm sitting on the plane, on the go-go internet, on the go-go in-flight internet, and I can't have Wi-Fi on my laptop and on my cell phone at the same time without paying for go-go twice. So how do I do 2FA from my cell phone while I'm sitting on the plane? Turns out we have a lot of people at Microsoft who travel a lot. This should have been obvious in retrospect. And so that's something that we're looking at. The newer releases of Azure MFA as a service are starting to support things like the oath, the rolling pin token, so that that'll function in an offline mode, so that will resolve the essentially lack of connectivity for your cell phone case.
Excellent.
Anybody else?
I think we're good. I think we're out of time, actually.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you very much for your time.
If you have more questions, certainly find Laura in the hall.